Alrighty, folks. Welcome back to the Mushing Alaska podcast. Super excited to have our first episode since the end of the 2024 Iditarod. Sean and I we got on YouTube last night and recorded this episode there first. And so, not to worry, we are going to still release this in the normal podcast form in addition to being on YouTube. Just kind of a little behind the scenes for me. It's now that this has kind of been set up with the background and all of that. It's almost easier for me to just press record and do it streaming on YouTube, and then on the back end take the file and load it up accordingly. So, anyways, I forgot to press. There's two buttons to press. There's a stream button and a record button. The stream button gets you to YouTube. The record button records it from my computer. So I forgot to press that after about a minute or two yesterday. So that's why I'm coming on now for this intro. But super excited to be back with my brother. We purposely haven't really spoke to each other in great detail so that we can do so in this in a podcast form. So that way I'm learning it almost as if the listeners are learning it at the same time. And so we did a lot of talking about the checkpoints that Sean worked. And in doing while doing it yesterday, we came to the realization that this is going to be the first episode of several probably where we recap and review the 2024 Iditarod. Moving forward, we'll still have guests as we've done in the past, but we probably could spend a couple of different episodes going over this year's race, and I think we're going to lean into that. And so that is a little bit about what's going on. Also, I will take it. I say it at the end of this episode, but I'll address it first. Last week, we were supposed to have this already come out, but Brendan, had, long story short, I had to have my appendix out. And so I've been, like the last week, I've been in recovery and haven't really felt that well until we finally pressed record last night. So it's part of why we didn't really announce the live. That's part of why we haven't really gotten back into a groove, is because I was dealing with that. But I'm feeling better, and we're going to hit the ground running. Super excited to break down this year's race, in addition to getting some guests on from the race and just continuing the momentum that we've been building for the last year plus. So for those of you who tuned in to the YouTube lives during the Iditarod, really appreciate your support and watching. And we're just going to continue to grow this thing. I'm curious as we move forward, and Sean and I have to figure this out, but I'd love some feedback from you all. If we were to regularly have a live podcast where you come on to YouTube and join us, and then we'll still release it in the podcast form as we're doing today, would that be something that would interest the fans? I would love for you all. You can DM us. You can comment on this post after the fact, whatever you want to do. But I would love to just get some feedback. There's an aspect of this being easier in a live setting. Like once I do it, it's done. It's not like I have to go back and redo too much. Whereas if we record it, then there's a lot of back end stuff. So I'd love to get some feedback if that's something you'd be interested in, and then maybe we'll put up a poll and get some feedback that way. The biggest issue for pulling it off is the time difference. I'm East Coast, Sean's there in Alaska, so that's the biggest thing. And then as we bring guests into the mix, there could be some logistical issues where doing a live may not be the best use of time. Maybe internet is an issue or whatever. So there are some things logistically to think about it, but I was thinking, well, what if we did one a month? Or, just curious to see what people are thinking on that. But outside of that, this from this we're gonna go straight into Sean and I's recap of things. And like I said, we recorded it last night on YouTube, and I forgot to press the record button for my computer. So this picks up like a minute and a half in. There's not a lot that was missed in the process, um, but it was definitely really nice to have Sean back and reunite with him. And we do this thing together, and it sounds like moving forward, this Iditarod, the event itself, and you'll hear Sean talk about it. Sounds like we might be kind of doing our own thing as things are now. So, and that's cool. But anyways, great to be back with Sean. Y'all enjoy this episode, and thank you guys for liking, following, subscribing. A big shout out to those of you who've been interactive on social media in the lives. We have some donation shout outs to do in our next episode, so I'll be more on top of that. And yeah, thank you guys and enjoy. Man, I have to tell you, like, I have never once wanted to watch a live feed of a checkpoint, and I don't know how long I was like on my end. I was doing all of this by myself, right? Without the like type of knowledge, the depth of knowledge that you have. I'm like worried about the guest, worried about my next post, worried about promoting that it's going live. Da 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 da. Well, I think it was like the second-ish day, maybe the third day, before I even realized that you were even on a live feed. And like you were, so I like chime in. Dude, I chime in. Oh my God. Fucking gold, dude. That's all I gotta say. The Iditarod, man. The insider, they hit a fucking home run, man. You're like, sorry guys, I just mainlined eight ounces of dark coffee to the dome. I'm ready to go, baby. And I was just like, grab your popcorn, baby. We are ready to roll. So, but no, I'm proud of the work you did. I know you worked, long, hard, crazy hours, I'm sure. In fact, I'd like to know more about that because I don't even know the details of that yet. But man, good fucking work out there. From one brother to another, I'm just proud of the work you did, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the high praise. I also just keep it relative, Yeah, I was just kind of hanging out behind the live stream, just zooming into the teams coming in, talking about, you know, we've spent all these hours talking about mushers. I've gone to all these races and stuff, so just all that accumulative uh, you know, it's not like I was able to get like great interviews and at the Copper Basin or at the Iditarod, but I was talking to everybody all the time and just like checking in and trying to introduce myself to people, but because there's just so many people in this amazing community. But yeah, you know, so I knew that all the Iditarod teams had I knew like the gist of their story at the worst. And then of course some people like, you know, Amanda Otto or Jessica Clake or Dallas or whatever, I might have like a little bit more in depth than average. But even, someone who I'd never met like Josh Robbins and Jeff Reed, who I got to meet out there, I at least knew the name of their kennel and like roughly where they were. And so that's kind of nice because people want to go to those websites. They don't know about them, and this is like when they get the most publicity. So it's kind of cool to help out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the schedule was crazy, but it wasn't like crazier than running the Iditarod. It made the race look really hard, like watching these guys coming in and out of checkpoints and knowing like I was struggling on my little sleep schedule. And then they were like running on a fraction of that. And I was like, I got to go inside to grab coffee like whenever I wanted and had a heated tent or a heated whatever place to sleep. 100% of every sleep I took was in a warmer than the ambient temperature of outside. And so yeah, it was eye-opening experience and super super thankful to Greg for considering me. Because yeah, I told him I would do that every I did ride for the rest of my life. unless I get to run the Iditarod again, you know, and then I would take it off for a year or something. But that, yeah, that was literally the dream job for sure.
That's awesome, man. I love to hear it. I think I did a lot of praise every day, you know, when I was doing my thing, holding it down. Every day I was essentially giving a Sean update. Like, so what checkpoint were you at? If I had like listened in and heard anything like worthwhile, like I would be like joking around or whatever. Um, so man, it was just like it was a great time. You know, and I'm just glad that I'm glad that it worked out. And I think that every day, you know, like I was praising what they were doing between the work you were doing behind the camera at the checkpoints, making it interesting, to then um, Katie Joe, like she was just a breath of fresh air. You know what I mean? And she, you know, like shout out to Liz. She is also was has over the last few years has been a breath of fresh air, but obviously with her out taking care of the baby, for me, I'd never experienced Katie Joe before, so the combination of you two and I think the Starlinks, man, I think the Starlinks made a freaking huge difference in terms of what they were able to provide every single day. There was new content in the form of live checkpoints, in the form of videos. You know, obviously, towards the end, you know, the videos become a little bit less. But even comparative to years, you know, last 4 or 5 years that I've been paying attention, it was just such an upgrade. So shout out to you, shout out to the insider, shout out to Greg and all the other people behind the scenes that we don't even know. Is there anyone that you want to give a shout out to
Oh yeah,
that
for
we
sure.
don't know their name?
Well, it was the Iditarod Insider Trail uh crew, which there's two pairs of people, four total. You had Ty and Philip, and Ty's been doing it for 5 years. Philip, I think's been doing it, or Phil, I don't know, but yeah, he Phil's been doing it for 15 years, and they basically are. You know, you take it for granted. Myself being the guiltiest of anybody when you're watching these videos on the insider website of like mushers that are camped out on the trail or whatever. I'm like, oh, like Greg and Bruce must have just kind of hopped on a snow machine and you know bumped out there for a quick ride, got an interview, and came back, kind of thing. It's like, no, there's like, so it's Ty and Phil, and then it was like Matthew and Ryan was like his first year doing it, but and Matthews too. So you basically would have like one snow machine guide and one like camera person, and but they both were kind of like their responsibilities definitely overlapped. You know, the person that's the snow machine guide to keep everyone alive out there, and the snow machine's fueled up and running and maintained, and they end up doing helping out with some camera work, and the camera people are driving a snow machine, so they have that responsibility too. But those guys are out there covering as much of the race as they can within reason, which is like, you know, I got to Finger Lake and they had already like driven through the night, you know, that night. And then I got to Nikolai and I see them come into there and they've like probably slept for an hour, you know, going into 200 miles into the race. And so they're just like, they were out there in it and with it like way more intense schedule, you know, than anybody on the. I mean, from what I observed, more intense than most of the rest of the insider crew. Just having to, by the nature of having to go 1,000 miles on a snow machine on this rugged terrain, and then that if that wasn't enough, you got to stop and you got to get the shot. And it's not like you just like press click and you've done it. Like you have to like be thoughtful of like where are you getting the shot, you know, what's the lighting like, and then of course you got to be sensitive to the musher who's like could give two shits about the shot. You know, they're in their own world, and you have to be like careful about when to approach them so that they're not like bothered and you're not bothering the dogs. So it's just like, if you could consider it a failure if they went all the way across the trail and then got these, you know, grumpy mushers or meh shots. but they like because that's what measured their success, wasn't making it along the trail, which is like an underlying requirement, but it's getting the shot, which is really hard to do with all these elements. You got being cold and like I meant all the things I've already mentioned. So I was just like, I saw them at Finger Lake, and I was like, yeah, these guys are. Greg was like, this is Ty. You know, I knew Ty. We got on a hunting trip, and Phil I'd met before, but it was in the mayhem of me running the race. He's like, yeah, these guys go the whole trail, and they're just like filming teams in between checkpoints. And I was like, wait, like who are they working for? And he's like, for the insiders. And I'm like, you guys always done this? They're like, yeah, though every single year, you know. And I was like, oh. And they looked like just long faces, you know, after the first. It's not, you know, nothing because it's such a difficult, grueling, you know, task. So that's I give shout out to them, and that's just those four people. You know, let's not forget the 2,000 volunteers that I could continue talking about for the next hour, but we got to move on.
Sure. Um, well, yeah, man. I guess we got a question, but before I ask you this question, so shout out to William. We'll get to your question. Um, Break down the checkpoints, man. I'm curious to hear. I know your first checkpoint was Finger Lake, and so I'm just kind of like run down if you can give us a little bit of, like an idea of what the checkpoints were like, or if there's anything memorable about, how was Finger Lake? That was your first time being sent out. You were flown out from Anchorage to Finger Lake, or how did that go down?
Yeah, yeah. I was flown from Anchorage. We stopped. We were in there's two planes that we had access to as insiders, and one of them was a Beaver, which is like a larger, small plane that can fit like 3 to 4. It could fit like I think well over 5 people if you put like the seats in the back, but they took out a couple seats. I mean, there was 5 seats in there when we got in there, and it was jam packed with equipment. And so that's like in a small plane world, pretty big. And the Beaver is considered to be like one of the premier small like bush planes, and there it's used in all over Alaska. And then there was like the Cessna, which is a 185, and I'm still kind of learning things about planes, but it's smaller. And we had really bulky equipment, something that like everybody was wishing was better, and it was no one's fault within the Iditarod community. It was because we're getting it from, you know, all over the country. And so we had this bulky equipment. So the smaller plane was just me and the pilot, or one person and the pilot, and then the stuff in the back. So you and the pilot and co-pilot and shotguns, which is awesome. I literally every single flight but one, I was like shotgun. It was pretty cool. And so we went to Rainy Pass to drop off one person, and I just like got to look at Rainy Pass. Hey, there it is, and then get back in the plane. And that was the only time I ever saw Rainy Pass. And then we went back to Finger Lake because that was the fastest way for one reason or another, and because they were going to Willow, I think, to pick up. So, pick up Greg and Bruce and company, and so yeah, we went to Finger Lake, and it was awesome, man. Everybody's excited. You know, no teams had shown up yet. There's like, you know, they've been out there like setting up camp. It's just a lake, and there's a lodge there, but it's not uh really used by the like the that it is used by the race. There was 2 people that work there that were basically running shuttles with the snow machine, and they were like a huge help to the checkpoint. And they may have done a lot. They did a lot of the anytime like the volunteers were like, oh crap, like we're kind of scratching our heads, we could use like X, Y, or Z. If you guys have it, they would be there with it. You know, for example, they got there, and they had sent out all the like canvas tents, like the Arctic ovens with like stoves and stuff in them, and like they were all piled up nicely on the lake. But it had gotten like warm a couple weeks before the race, and there were some overflowers, and maybe even some people described it as a hole in the ice. I'm not sure. It might have been actually a hole in the ice that all of the tents were floating in at one point, and then they got frozen in,
Oh
and
man.
so they had to like chip them out and like try to pull open these tents that have been packed down as tightly as they possibly could be packed down. They're like frozen in like that, and I didn't see this, but this is everybody was telling me about it, and they had to like take blow torches to the thing to warm it up and just enough to kind of open it up, and it took like all day, and they were doing they couldn't get in there like in time because of the weather, so it took like got there a couple days late, and they're dealing with this, and you get there and it's just this like immaculate base camp of tents, and like everything's really well organized, comfortable. They have like a generator at a few of the tents to plug our crap into, and a table in each tent, and the stove in there, and I think we had some propane stoves and some wood stoves, and then they had the volunteer tent that was got they're making meals in there and whatnot. So yeah, it was just a really nice, comfortable for a place that's just a camp setup. Was really as glamping, and it was apparent they'd put in a bunch of work and faced a little bit of adversity in that process. So I was really liked Finger Lake, and the people were awesome, and there was like a lot of downtime, but like when Greg and Bruce and me and Sebastian recorded that thing, we were kind of in the middle of just like kind of setting things up, and nothing's too crazy, and kind of the calm before the storm. I had only seen the ceremonial. I didn't get to see the restart. And so I just, woke up Sunday from Anchorage and then went straight into Finger Lake and was like, okay, here we go. And it was cool. I got to spend the first 2 days at least with Greg and Bruce. And then, there, Tom is a guy you'll hear behind the camera, and Christian, you maybe heard about, who helped with coverage in a pinch last year, and his huge for doing camera work and drone footage. And they were all there, and we got to all spend time together, and kind of was good to ask questions for me because I was about to be alone for the next 11 days with a camera, and got to make sure I kind of knew what was going on.
Dude, so Finger Lake was the checkpoint where Jesse punched the moose, right?
Yeah, I got the
Okay.
like all that was happening. That was crazy. Yeah.
Dude, all right. So let's just hit that for a second. So obviously that news breaks first the like from my perspective of what I was doing, I was recording. Going into the recording, I had just heard and watched the video of the moose being punched, right? And so I first saw, like, it came across, I think maybe Jess, maybe she saw it on Twitter or something. She's like, you got to go find the video for it. So the first thing I do is I go to the video, and it's one of those where like super zoomed in on the face, and then like super zoomed back out to like autocorrect, and then zoom back in. And I'm like, dude, that's my brother. He totally shot that video. I know it's shot. Like, you're still getting you. That was one of the first videos, right? I'm sure you're like still getting
Yeah,
used
I
to the
mean,
camera or
I'm not
whatever.
even sure that that was mine because it could have been, but if it was like if the camera was moving around, then it was Christian, and if it was looking like it was from a stationary point of
Mm-hmm.
origin, then it was me. Because I had zero mobility. Like once the camera's there, if I want to change it, it's a whole process. So yeah, I'm not sure, but I was filming some of those. Maybe I
Okay.
don't remember, but
Right.
let's blame it on Christian. Let's go ahead and do that.
Okay. All right. That works.
No, it was probably me.
No,
Yeah,
but
he was battling the flu too, or like not flu, but flu-like symptoms, and was out there carrying, a 40-pound thing on his shoulder, tromping through snow, and he kept on joking to me about how, yeah, I think I'm gonna scratch.
that's too
From
funny.
as the cameraman. It was funny.
um, so you were in Finger Lake like what, a day and a half, 2 days?
Yeah,
I don't think from what I recall, I don't feel like you were there for too long.
yeah. It wasn't more than we got there like at sunset of the day of the restart, and then the first team was there, before sunrise the next day. And then I stayed through that day and I think it was into the next into the next day, maybe. Yeah, I don't really, dude. It kind of blends together a little bit,
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's fine.
I think it was 1.5 days. We'll call it.
All right, so yeah, I mean, like, I want to hit on all these other checkpoints, but I don't want to like go too much down the rabbit hole, just because like we're gonna lose out on time, like being respectful of your out time today. Um, so then you go to Nikolai. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, firstly, I know that we want to go past Finger Lake, but I did see that whole thing go down where Jesse came in and he's like, it's the first musher, I think, and we're excited. It's everybody's excited. Just like, I wonder what's been going down. He's like, yeah, we almost had this thing with the moose, and he punched it. He said that. I'm like, what? And I don't even know if that he said that on camera or off. Maybe he did say that on camera,
He did,
and
yeah, yeah.
then I was like, the first thought in my head was thinking back to like Matt Failer's and moose incident from a year or two ago, where somebody else had said, "Hey, there's an angry moose on the trail," and then the next musher came and he's like, "Yep, there's definitely an angry moose on the trail." And then Matt came and it was like, "All right, I gotta dispatch this little fucker," and then you know Jesse comes in and saying, "Hey, there's an angry, like full grown healthy moose, like strong." Sometimes you get these moose that are like dying and they're like, just kill me, because they're just so much snow and it's cold and winter sucks. And if you ever interview a moose, it's hard. It's hard being a moose. And so this moose is on the trail, and
Interview
Dallas,
a moose.
the
Moose. I
first thing
like
I'm
that.
thinking, when Jesse says, "Hey, I punched this moose," and like we barely got by like unscathed, I'm thinking, all right, who's next? Because they're about to, like, this is kind of tight area of trails, and like this is going to be interesting. And so yeah, Dallas comes in. He's and he has Baloo in the bag, and camera. He's like, you should get. I there's certain, like, you know respect that you have to have for the dogs and the musher. And so Falu's in the bag. You're like, let's not point the camera right at like Falu, who just is in like a pretty sensitive medical situation. And Dallas made that known. Like, look, there's a bunch of other great dogs up there. Why don't you look at them while we deal with this situation? And so that was just dealt with like very sensitively and efficiently. And it was one of several things that I saw that were really difficult, tough, bad situations that were dealt with like super professionally, and like with you know um real, like, time is of the essence, kind of energy, but not like, but it was not necessarily like a panic. Oh, what are we going to do? Like, they just knew exactly, this is the process. Let's get the dog, to this area where we got things set up, and examine like what are the problems? What are we looking at? Does the dog okay to hang out here? Did we need to get the first flight back to Anchorage? Turns out she needed the first flight back to Anchorage, and a couple hours later was back in the big city. So that was um cool to see. But yeah, and Falou seems to be doing well. I just saw a post of Falou
Yep.
from Dallas, and so continuing to recover. But yeah, that's the end of Finger Lake. There's so much more, but
Dude,
we
I'm
can
I'm
maybe
glad that
tap
you at
into that
least
later.
I'm glad that you at least brought that up. Because that was definitely, a big aspect of the race. The moose and the residual aspects of how the moose came in back into play so many times. For me on my end, I remember talking about the moose on day one, and then for me the next day, that like, but I don't think, but if I recall, Dallas had not yet had the encounter with the moose when I started recording. So yeah, let's see. Dallas comes. Yeah, like he came in at 8 o'clock. That means it was. Yeah, no, that this had not happened. So like day one, moose encounter with Jesse. Day two, Dallas puts down the moose. I'm thinking after that we're done, right? And then it just like kept coming on.
Yeah, Yeah,
So,
the next like few mushers, like I would just kept on asking every musher that came in, like, how they so you see that moose? Like, what's up with that? And they're like, yeah, like we came like around the corner, down the hill, and like just full ramp off the moose's ass, like caught air with the sled and land. That was the first like 3 or 5 mushers after Dallas, and then I think someone got it moved off the trail, but yeah, I don't really. All this information kind of trickles in, and then by the end of the time at my time at Finger Lake, people were like, yeah, I saw like a little blood trail and some moose off to the side, but it wasn't really in the way. So yeah, that
gotcha.
was that was that whole situation. It was cool checkpoint to see the teams like way on the other side of the lake, and then you kind of could follow them. It was a really cool shot. I don't know if you remember that shot, the shots of the teams coming in, but it was like, oh, there's a team like way in the distance. I'd zoom like super in, and it was just I love seeing like a dog team that's just like dwarfed by the size of Alaska and the size of just the country that they're traveling through, and you just see this little tiny little microscope. If like the video that I have of Wally Robinson's team camped out on the shelter cabin, that's on the Google Drive that I share with you, Brennan.
Mm-hmm.
There's a video of Walter Robinson's team camped out at the shelter cabin that's right before the sea ice, just past
Yep.
Shaktoolik, and so just like those shots of like teams way the hell off in the distance, you can't tell who the dogs or musher are, and that was like the epitome of that shot of Finger Lake from Finger Lake of the teams getting in. I
Nice.
really wanted to get a good angle of like each checkpoint, and sometimes you had to sacrifice something, whether it
Right.
was not being able to see the mushers working on their dogs, or maybe you don't get to see them exiting, but you get to see them entering, you know.
Right. So
But
that was
that's Finger Lake.
Finger Lake. And
Yep.
then take me over to Nikolai for a little bit. For me, just so like, all right, on my end, right? So let's kind of like tell your perspective. I'll tell my perspective. So on my end, Nikolai, by the time you're in Nikolai, we're about to have Riley on. And it worked out beautifully because you were on the camera in Nikolai and all the front runners were literally coming in as we went live. So Riley just he was on Zoom with me doing this, live on YouTube, but then he's on his phone pulling up the live feed and you're out there talking too. So like sometimes he's like listening to what you're saying, which is hilarious. And so that was just kind of a little bit of the background there. I guess for that checkpoint, let's see. So we got to see that was Nikolai. So yeah, Milla came in, Travis came in, Ryan Reddington came in, Dallas Seavey came in, Jesse Holm, like all of those people came in within the hour of us going live. It was absolutely perfect and epic. Like shout out to Riley for pulling up the feed. That made it interesting because, like on my end, like there's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of crazy developments on day 2 of the race. So I was like
Mm-hmm.
going into that one, I was like, I wonder what we're gonna talk. Like, the moose was the story, but like beyond that, I was like, huh, what are we gonna talk about? And then he pulled up that live feed, and it just like it made that live video on my end go a lot smoother, I thought. But anyways, so tell us a little bit more about Nikolai on your end.
Nikolai was definitely in the conversation for like most put together checkpoint for just like musher conveniences. They just had like this pot of boiling water that, when you have a checkpoint that doesn't have access to like easy access to like warm water, these guys had water coming from the school or something, and they'd put it in the barrel, and then they'd just get this ripping fire underneath the barrel, and the water was like, I mean, every musher was so stoked because you get there, the water's piping hot, like boiling hot, literally, like as you're pouring it on frozen meat, it's like cooking the meat, like going from like red to like brown and cooked. instantly. And the dogs, like, that's an it's kind of like nice for to have a couple of cooked pieces in there for the dogs. I think they get excited about that. And so that's just takes away probably like easily 15 minutes worth of work for your musher. But it was for some teams it's a little bit of a walk to get there. Maybe like, and that was a fun thing I was doing that my friend maybe pointed out, that I would kept on rating the pace at which the mushers were walking to get the water. And I'd be like I'd be like zoomed in, like watch it, and like I think it's almost borderline like invasive to like, because the mushers are like in the zone. They have like no idea that I'm filming them because I'm pretty far away, and they're like walking from their team with like an empty bucket to go to like the hot water, and and I'm just like, all right, so everything's efficiency out here. It's important to get those dogs fed and taken care of and bedded down as quickly as possible and maximize your team's time stopped. And uh and so they're walking, and you see some people literally like full on power walk, like, just we gotta get to like ASAP, and other people are like, God damn it, I'm so tired, like I'm just gonna use this walk as like a little bit of a breather, to just like where I'm just get to walk, instead of bending over and taking off booties and whatever. And so I'd just be rating like, oh, there's Milliporcid. She's got a good pace going to the water. I'm gonna give it about a 4 star, about a 5 star pace, and then if someone else would come in and they'd be like sprinting, I'm like, that's 5 star right there. That's what we're looking for. And so I just having fun with it. But that was when I started doing that, was at probably at the tail end of Finger Lake, but that was something that kept on doing. And anyways, yeah, Nikolai, they have the hot barrel of water, and then just like the organization of the parking. The out trail was a little bumpy, like teams kind of trenched out a little bit, going through some deep powder, and then but I had a great view of like teams coming in, great view of the checkpoint, and great view of the teams exiting. Like the trifecta was at Nikolai. And then the there'd be like locals that are there, super helpful, super nice. Like very like their demeanor was very like, we're here, let us know if you need any help. Like they weren't like, mom can be worth like a, hey, if you want any more wine, it's in the fridge, and if you need, you know, any
Yeah.
more chocolates, they're over here on the corner. Like, we get it. Thank you. Appreciate the hospitality. I love you, mom. But well, we got it. And they just be chilling. Like, you guys could probably figure out where everything is, right? But if you need us, we're here. You know, and they'd give mushers rides. Sorry, mom, I didn't mean that. That was mean. I love you. And uh, they'd give mushers rides on the snow machine to the school. If like sometimes there was a couple mushers that had to walk because they were taking a nap or whatever. But and then you get to the school and they have like a full like kitchen of hot food for the mushers. Volunteers could eat it too, but they'd have to pay like $5 or something. And then they had like a nice warm place in the school gymnasium to sleep, that's quiet, and a little room to air out your wet gear. And so yeah, it was just I think a pretty cool checkpoint. And it was the first village, and villages were a special part of this race, our special part of this race. So yeah, I
Nice.
liked Nikolai, and I stayed there a long time. I think I stayed there like maybe like,
I think that was like
I don't
over
know. I was
48
there from the first
hours.
musher to the last musher.
Yep. Yep. So then from Nikolai, what was it? Was it Takatna that you were at next?
Yeah, Chikatna. So a lot of teams taking 24s. Pretty much that's all I saw was teams taking 24s. A couple teams coming out of their McGrath 24 and going, the short run to Chikatna. So they may drop a dog or pick up some stuff. Um, like Wally Robinson, I saw him just kind of get in there, pick up some stuff, and continue on. But yeah, it was fun to watch people doing their 24s. I like spent lots of time just drinking coffee and hanging out with the mushers and eating some pancakes. Try not to steal too many of the pancakes, because they probably needed them more than me, but I was hungry too. And and this is kind of where it began. I feel like I got pretty like I would go, I was like, I got to take an hour and a half or 2 hour nap, and then this next musher's coming in, and so I'd set my alarm, go take my nap, and just like wake up like 5 hours later, like
Oh,
you know.
damn.
But that's just whatever. I'll set more than one alarm maybe next time, but I just thought, yeah, that was a little bit above a bummer, but it was also like at some point I probably do have to. I don't need to be on like the full on musher schedule all the time.
Right.
Um, so that was like kind of the agreement. Like, obviously at some point you're gonna have to sleep and you're gonna miss some stuff, whatever. So yeah, Nikolai, that's
No, that
that's
was
that.
Takatna.
Takatna. Oh, sorry, yeah, Takatna. Yeah, and they were like making, they had the pies. It was a little bit of a tight, setup, and but it was a really nice dog yard, and like where for the mushers it was tight where we were, and for the media people it was pretty sweet. Honestly, we were like in a big library and classroom and stuff, and um yeah, it was cool to be into the airstrip's like 2 or 3 miles from, maybe like 2 miles from the town, or maybe a mile and a half. So I was like thinking about walking into town, and I was like, maybe not.
Maybe
So I
not.
got
Maybe not.
got rides from the locals, and uh yeah, I got to. I remember, Ryan Reddington stopped by the camera and said hello to the fans and stuff, and talked to, Aaron Burmeister, and got to hear, hang out with Jesse Royer for the first time, and uh, you know, a lot of talked with like Bryce and Aaron Altimus a lot, in those earlier checkpoints, and just trying to give them words of encouragement, and yeah, it's cool. Takatna, I was there for, I don't know, who knows, man. I was there for like 2 or less days.
Right. And then, did you make it to Cripple? Is that
I sure did. Yeah.
up on a Crip Creek?
Yeah, buddy.
Oh
Yep. And
yeah,
that's
here we
literally
go.
on Cripple Creek. Yeah.
That's
Cripple,
why. Yeah, that's why I went there. I
literally.
had to do it. Had to do it.
Yeah. That's the closest creek to that checkpoint. And I learned the history of the checkpoint, that it was like they had to make a checkpoint because of the stretch from Ophir to Ruby. Is just, you need to have a place to drop a dog and to resupply. And so the only thing that was naturally in between those two checkpoints was this like mine that may or may not still be there, but it's 4 miles from where the checkpoint is today. And uh they made it, they were like, hey, let's call this mine and see if they can let us just come and hang out. And so they started setting up the checkpoint there, and then like as the race started, or like right before it started, they like, the mine was like, some people in the mine were not stoked on the checkpoint, and so they like put down some stuff blocking the airstrip, and that was kind of their like middle finger to the checkpoint, maybe, and under, whatever. Nothing against the mine. I don't even know if it's still going or not, but it's not everybody wants to have hundreds of dogs coming to your checkpoint for 48 hours straight. That's fair. And all the buzzing of the planes, and it just, yeah, they got to put their mining stuff on pause. So I don't blame them, but they had to figure out something. So they like literally sent out like multiple planes, and they just like scoped the area within 10 miles of there or whatever, for like what is a place that we could set up a checkpoint that's like
Right.
accessible and flat and easy or whatever. And so this is just like this open swamp that like, they're like, yeah, let's just set up stuff there. And they had like a few days to do it, and they set up, tents, and maybe, I don't know, they set up a makeshift checkpoint. And now they're, fast forward multiple decades, and they've got like permanent structures there, but they can't get out there in the summer to like do like good work. I mean, they're doing great work on them, but you can do better work when there's no snow everywhere, and they
Right.
can't get out there. Like, you literally can't like land a plane there. Like, it's like you pretty much just can't. There's no like big river to float in on or something. So there's just like not. You could go to Ophir and walk 60, 70 miles, but that's the reality of the situation. So they get there and it's every other year in Cripple. So they get there, and it's 2 years since a human's been there.
Right.
So you got 2 years of like all this like you know kind of semi-permanent, semi-temporary structures that have had all this weight of snow that's melted and come and gone, and so they have to dig out all this stuff. It's a March or February when they get there, and so there's just like a winter's load of snow, and they got to make a way to get in and out of these buildings. They have like this super comfortable sleeping area for mushers that has 8 beds and it's like super heated with a diesel stove nicely, and so they have to like get all these stoves, hooked up and remove a bunch of snow, and they put like new roofing on the shacks, and they've literally were there for 2 weeks before the mushers got there, just putting this checkpoint together, like driving snow machines um up and down like the swamp to like make a airstrip. It's not like there's an airstrip, it's just
Right.
like a open area of snow that they like marked, and they have to like create this airstrip and then get all the food and moved in and the tents set up and the marking of the checkpoint, and it was a ton of work to witness. I didn't even witness the work. I just saw the end result, which was this magical checkpoint that was super well run with a bunch of happy people, and that have been working hard, and these two dudes have been running the Cripple and the Iditarod checkpoint because they alternate in a similar fashion, where no one's really going to those places except for those once every 2 years nowadays.
Right.
So they have all this like crazy free race work to do. So that was cool to see, and had some nice conversations with a lot of my mushing buddies there, and the uh certainly the middle and back of the pack had some nice talks with those guys, and yeah.
Nice. Nice. So we have a couple more checkpoints that I want to hit, but I wanted to hit you with a couple of comments in the chat. So, Cindy is someone who's been, shout out to Cindy. She's been watching a lot of the videos that I've been doing while you were gone, and she just wanted to say that she thought you did a great job on the trail this year, Sean. And then this other lady, Shelly, said Sean and Katie Joe made Insider 1,000 times better this year. Great job. Another person, Weave, said agreed. Most interactive year ever for the Insiders. So just wanted to shout out those comments and share those with you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. And also I wanted to thank William. He said, Brendan, you're shouting everybody out, but you did an outstanding job covering the race, and I appreciate that. It was a lot of work, and it was tough to do without my partner in crime, because like I can do all of the other behind the scenes stuff, and then Sean can like just talk, right? And like he's kind of got me covered. But for this endeavor, it was like, all right, I'm hosting, producing, I'm trying to learn the program that we're using that helps me get it onto YouTube. It's just like a lot of trial and error early on. So anyways, appreciate the people that have joined live and have asked questions throughout this. This is just going to be a podcast, but I wanted to do it live. I thought it would be cool if we did it live. And the way it's going, I think we're going to have to do 2 parts of our recap of the race, because Sean's got a lot of details, a lot of stories, and so do I, and it's fun catching up this way. So I just thought I would throw that in there. Once you recount your checkpoints, William was also curious what your favorite checkpoint was, but we'll circle back around to that. So yeah, I think that you told us enough about Cripple. Coming up next, we've got Nulato. And so yeah, like one thing, you probably didn't watch any of the work that I've done, and I'm not expecting you to, Sean, but like on my end, that was the first time that I had to talk about something that was a little bit difficult. The moose thing was one thing, but that was just kind of circumstantial. Um, but yeah, like the Nulato checkpoint, had to be a little bit difficult for you. I know, like you and I haven't talked about this leading up to right now, and I don't want to like put you on the spot, but obviously, like you witnessed something that was hard to witness, and so whatever you're comfortable talking about, just talk to us a little bit about what that experience was like, or whatever you feel like sharing in regards to that happening with Bog and with Isaac's team.
Yeah, well, firstly, the new Lotto checkpoint might, I mean, it certainly had the nicest facilities of any checkpoint. Let's start about what, 'cause
Okay.
I was there for 24 hours before we had the incident with the Isaac's dog Bog. But so with this huge gymnasium, like really nice school, and it was really cool to see the front of the race. Like I did see them already at Cripple, but it's just like I don't know. It felt like, oh, like we're here on the Yukon River. Like you can see Travis coming into first. That was like when Travis had like a firm hold on first, and I really truly thought like I think I learned a lot just from like the like competitive side of things. Like you see someone in first in New Lotto, and he has like a pretty good lead, and you're like, oh, like he could do this, like. And then, you're like, all right, maybe he'll make some moves, maybe he won't. I don't know. And then just things, it's like, it's not like you're driving a car out there. You got these live animals that you got to, you know, figure out what they're telling you. And you can't just be like, I'm going to go and run this, you know, uh, and run this first place schedule. Like, obviously, if that was the case, then maybe a lot more people would be winning the Iditarod. But yeah, he got, you know, to Caltag, and in between that stretch from Caltag to Unalakleet, I don't know the whole story really, but he had to make an extra stop, and maybe he maybe mid did some longer runs a little early. I'm not really sure, but maybe we hope to have Travis on because I got to see him in Nome. He was all smiles, and I think it was a really, I mean, it's already the Iditarod, so it's a hard race in general, but I think like the trail looked like it was pretty tough to him, tough on him for one reason or another. And he was like fully just blinders on. Like I don't have room in my brain for anything but what my mission is right now. So like I'd see him and he'd be like, "Hey man," like and just like not ready to have a nice like "what's up, buddy" kind of talk. And I was like, totally get it. Anyways, so that was kind of cool to see like the drama of Travis getting in there in first, and then you see, uh,
And let me just add to that real quick. So, like behind the scenes, Sean and I have been trying to get Travis on for like the last, I don't know, like month and a half leading up to the Iditarod, and for
yeah,
whatever reasons with schedules, it just hasn't fully worked out. And so, like at this point, Travis is in first place. He's got that nice lead. And in my head, I'm like, man, I'm just like, why the heck couldn't we have gotten him on? Like, this is a perfect time. Like, I just like, man, I would love to have, just have like a little bit more ammunition behind, like, well, we just had him on. This is what he's thinking, that sort of thing, his perspective. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, and I know that you guys are friends, and so I know that you were not only thinking that he was gonna, had the chance to win, but like you were also very much so rooting him on. And at that point though, I mean, there's still half the race left.
I know, and that was the one thing
You
I
know?
think I learned from this whole experience was like how easy it is. Like everybody knows, like looking, like if you're stepping back from the race, like everyone knows you just gotta like what what it looks like when someone goes just too hard too early, or like is trying to race like way before the coast, and um And so, but then I'm in cripple and I'm like, dude, let's like lay it down. Let's who's laying down the hammer. It's like hard. I'm like, oh, like when you're in this, and I'm not even really truly in it, but just being at the checkpoints and stuff, you're thinking like, okay, like they better get out of here soon. Like it's already been resting, 4 hours, and it's like in reality, like I'm forgetting everything that I've known for years, which is, keep your team, don't go, keep it in the lane and make your move. Maybe you can make a move like Amanda running from cripple straight to Ruby, and doing those bigger runs all in one. You can make like soft moves, and that's what Travis was doing to get into. He didn't go like too hard or too crazy. He made some of those softer moves, and they are moves, but they're not like crazy or whatever. You're not doing like 100-mile runs and stuff. But like I found myself like wondering, oh, when are these guys going to make their move? And it's like you've been out here for several days, and you're like, oh, they still have so long to go. And it's like, really, how often is like the first place winner in first place on the Yukon River? It's probably not. It's close to probably half the time or less. So yeah, that I just get lost. I got lost in that whole thing a little bit personally, and I could see how much easier it would be for a musher. You have to, as a musher, be constantly like checking your times resting, your times running. Like if you get access to that information, like just be writing that down and being looking like, because you like they can't remember like, oh, I did a 6 hour run 3 runs ago, stopped for 4 hours and 15 minutes, did a 6.5 hour run, stopped for 5 hours, did a and they got to remember all this shit, and just you got to be able to see like, all right, what is the like how's my am I do you think it's reasonable to ask this of my team to have this much rest and this far of a run and that whole thing? Anyways, so it was just cool to see the front of the race, like Jesse Holmes, Paige Drobny, Matt Hall. um you know at this point, Jeff Dieters, like,
He's making a strong
way
comeback.
behind 10th. He's not yet. He's just got a strong team. He's like somewhere between 10th and 15th. Like you could see what place he leaves the new lotto in, I'm sure. Um and he just, he said, I'm gonna make my move right now. I'm gonna go and do 2 runs to the Uniloclete, and then I was like, okay, man, like great, and then he sure as shit did it. And we all know how that story ends. And so yeah, it was cool to see the front of the race. It was like super sunny. Every single day in New Lotto was like the sickest day, like just bluebird, like maybe some light winds, but just super sunny. And then freaking cold at night. On the river, I heard it was 30 to 50 below, depending on where you were, and windy, and it was some tough runs, for some teams. But yeah, it's a sensitive subject seeing, Isaac Kent was coming in. I'm super excited to see. He's like, might be my closest friend on the trail, so you're excited. I'm zoomed in looking at him, and then see some dogs slip and fall, and you're like, oh, wonder and then the second I saw him do this, with the motion to like, because all the vets and the race officials, they're all right on standby, and he like looks right at him and waves him over, and that was this, like, it was in that moment I knew like we have a really fucked situation going on right now, because he can handle, and so they like that want to talk about the Falou situation where everybody was on it, like professional, and like working with like some serious, like every second counts kind of energy, but doing it like in a, like not doing it in a panicked way, like doing it in the most efficient manner, so you see all 3 vets out there, all giving CPR, and doing it for as long as they could until there wasn't any hope left, and and so yeah, that, and everything, like I didn't give a shit about the live stream for the rest of that day, and
Yeah.
so and that was evident. I think if you're watching the live stream, I just kind of panned it somewhere else, and I was like, how can I help, and probably the best way for me to help was to just let the people that are the vets do their thing, and so everything was there for like, you know but the best place for that to happen for Isaac was with 3 vets 200 yards away, so that's they were there. There's everything that could have been done was done. And yeah, it's just such a believes a head scratcher for not just Isaac, but for Hunter and for uh, Calvin, and they all kind of had like a um, similar demise, and it was super healthy dog, peak performing, like competent musher, running like well within their dog. Like they weren't pushing their teams. Hunter, Calvin, Isaac, especially. I mean, Hunter's dogs. I saw them in New Lottie. They're great. Calvin and Isaac are running like these teams that almost could have made Dallas's A team, and they barely didn't. And they're running like puppy schedules, running like resting. Like those dogs are humping each other at checkpoints. Like they're just not tired. So they're just running super safe, easy schedules. So just to have like these three things happen in a similar way, you just got to think there's something missing, that like some bit of information that no one knows, that we like hope to find, because one time this happens and you think, oh, sudden death event, they have animals, they can die. That is like, you can't just guarantee 100% that everyone's gonna be okay. This could happen on you walking your dog, or laying on the couch, uh and these dogs, they were doing exactly what they loved, and they weren't like running them into this. Like this was like totally within their conditioning and training. And so it's just uh you hope maybe it was just a random terrible luck to happen to three dogs in this race, but it hasn't happened in all these years. And it just, you hope that there's something, that these tests that they do on the dogs will be found, that's like, oh, like actually this medication that we give the dogs has this side effect on 10% of dogs or something. I hope they can find something like that. That's, there's something that maybe like we don't know about a certain medicine or a certain kind of kibble, or we don't know about a certain kind of something, or we missed something in the pre-race. And I know that everyone in the Iditarod race is going to be doing everything they can to find that answer, whatever it may be. And so they're not just like, oh yeah, the necropsy was like inconclusive, and that's like, let's just wash our hands of that. you know no, they're like, they're not satisfied with that answer, so they're going to be continuing to do more involved testing, and do what they did. I don't know how the, and they probably had limited access to like medical tools and whatnot, giving looking at these dogs. So, but it wasn't an ulcer, it wasn't pneumonia, it wasn't what you could have maybe seen in the earlier years of the Iditarod. Uh, that was something that was, we later learned, was avoidable. Uh, this, there wasn't like an obvious answer um to this. So yeah, that it was devastating, and it no one no one wanted this to happen, and it was hard. It was the hardest, pill for Isaac and Calvin and Hunter to swallow. They love these dogs. They've ever in most of their situations, they've known these dogs since they were puppies, or certainly for multiple years and most of their lives. Especially, I know like Isaac knew Bog since he was a little puppy, and Hunter has a close relationship with George, and Calvin's been working at Mitch's for a long time, so they know these dogs, and it's like heartbreaking for them. And so it's just and it's heartbreaking for everybody. So we it made you think, what are we even doing out here? Like, how is this happening? And you kind of like went through some pretty dark thoughts, and then you see like the next checkpoint I'm at, I'm like, all right, like there's still a lot of dogs, there's still like, and they're all like thriving, and you see like these super happy loving dogs and just living the dream, and people accomplishing their goals and getting to the finish line. And then you're like, I thought, this is why we do it. Okay, because the dogs are living their best freaking life. Sometimes some shit happens, and we're doing it literally, it's so evident that we're doing everything we can to never have that ever happen. But you can't just make that a 0% chance. Like, you just, and but we're about as close to it as we can get. And yeah, we hope we find some new information between now and next year as to, what could have been done differently. But it certainly wasn't anybody's fault. And you wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy.
Yeah, I appreciate the depth of your answer, and I don't want to necessarily spend the rest of this episode on only that, but I did want to at least ask you a follow up question, and that is, so in a lot of cases where there is a dog fatality that is related to dog sledding or racing or whatever, there are two common types of things that cause death, correct? There's what is it, pneumonia?
An aspiration, pneumonia, and yeah, an ulcer. But like, yeah, those haven't happened in
Well, and
quite
so
a
that's
yeah.
and that's what my question is. So the necropsy it's easy to diagnose both of those things relatively, like it doesn't take too much of an in-depth necropsy, at least from my understanding, to determine those being the causes of death. And so it's not like, what I wanted to say is, it's not like, oh, it was a quick necropsy and they just like they weren't able to, like, they didn't do it in the lab, or they didn't, like, those things are easy to determine, and that wasn't present when they did the necropsy. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it rules it out, right? But it at least lessens the chances of that being the case. Is that right, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it pretty much is ruled out.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know with like 100% certainty, but like, there's, there's, yeah, I think you would have gotten to that conclusion. And what you see is a drop in like the dogs. Like it would be like the vets would have missed something in the musher, but have missed something at this checkpoints. Like these dogs were like happy, and like, I mean, veterinarians were like looking at Isaac's team like he might be like have the best looking dog team in this race right now. That he got
Jeez.
that compliment like 2 checkpoints before New Lotto. And so, you know, those things, having an ulcer or aspiration pneumonia, you might, they're listening to the way that the lungs sound when they're breathing at checkpoints, and you can hear, if you can hear liquid in there, you like pull the dog. And I saw that happen this year. They hear a slight little wheeze, and they come back, check the dog again, they hear it again. It's like boom, not even a question, dog's out. Like, and then they get back, they get some IV, they get some rest, they um I don't know exactly what all goes into it, but they get that dog on the mend, and that's what happened. But yeah, we can say that with relative certainty. I think that it's not those things, because you had healthy dogs, and then just instantly they're gone. And so yeah, devastating. And I have a lot of other thoughts on it. I don't know if I've really explained myself like super clearly or like fairly. I've tried to be fair to everybody and not rub anyone the wrong way talking about this, but it was difficult for me to process, and I haven't really talked about it much, you know
Yeah, no, I
since
didn't. I,
Lotto with many people. So I don't really, I'm kind of, my thoughts are a little disorganized on it, so anything I might have said, I reserve the right to like be like, all right, wait, did I mean that? I'm not sure. I
you
think I did
you
a
you
pretty
reserve the
good
right
job.
to be like, Brendan completely caught me off guard, threw me under the bus. I had no time to prepare for this, and I didn't have all
I mean,
my.
I've been thinking about it a little bit, but yeah.
No, I think, from what you said, I think you answered it right well, and the thing that I learned while you were gone, as it started to relating to the dogs or just teams having to scratch or whatever, is like, I'm doing this thing every single day to not even talk about it. I was like, I have to
Yeah,
talk about
you
it.
got to talk about it. Yeah.
And so, I appreciate you saying anything, and I don't think you were offensive to anyone or, anything like that. So, for anyone who's watching now or will listen later, take it easy on my brother. I'll come fucking
Well,
get you.
it's not about being like, it's not about not offending someone. It's just like, I don't, I don't have all the information, and
Right.
I don't really care if I'm like offending someone in PETA. But yeah, we, you get
That's
the
it.
idea.
Yep. All right, so I know that you're up against the clock, and I want to respect you at that time. We've already decided
Like
that we're
10
gonna
minutes.
run it back with another one, maybe two. Someone in here said, Cindy said, do a part 2 or 3 if you need to. We want to hear all the stories. Um, but I would like to at least kind of try to wrap up some of these checkpoints. So from
Yeah.
Nulato, you went to Shaktoolik. All right, and that I don't know. Again, I'm not paying attention in years past to the live stream, but I would be willing to say they might not have ever had a live
Uh,
feed in Shaktoolik. Maybe.
I don't know. I thought that might have been the case, but I yeah, I can't say with certainty there. But yeah, Shaktoolik was awesome, man. I mean, super epic flight, like Bluebird. Every day after I got to New Lotto was like perfectly clear, barely any clouds in the sky. And we got to Shaktoolik, and I got to see Eric Kelly, who was also in Nikolai, and he's an Iditarod veteran, and we should have him on here at some point. But he he was also volunteering at, I believe, at the Copper Basin, and so yeah, just like I'd seen a lot of him this winter, and it was cool to see a familiar face. Almost at every checkpoint I got to, I'd see somebody that I was like, "Oh, what's up, man? Like I didn't know you were gonna be here." And so that was kind of
Nice.
cool,
Nice.
and got to meet like Linda and like I can't remember her husband's name, but the two people that like kind of run the checkpoint have been part of it for years and years and years, and they were super sweet. And that was definitely the town that had the most like local love, like just like people showing up from town and just excited to be there, and we didn't have like any room in this building, and but people just come piling in like we want to talk to our mushers, and we're like, hell yeah, come on in, like we'll just make room however we can. And so it was cool to mingle with some of the people that live there, and learn a thing or two about like what life is in Shaktoolik, because it is. I was like, dude, what do you you can live somewhere else, right? And I was like, know that, right? And they were like, it's like it's pretty windy here. And I was, I think he was like, yeah, obviously, but they now, I think now the people that have been running the checkpoint, they spend some time in Florida in the winter, understandably, but it's got world class like fishing and hunting opportunities, and that's the biggest reason why you see people living there. But it's literally just like one street on a spit, and there's like it's just a crazy, yeah, it's a wild place, man, and it's beautiful, 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 especially if it's not windy. And we got there, it was super windy, not super windy, but like regular Shaktoolik windy, which was like 20-mile-an-hour winds. And then it kind of calmed down for the rest of my time there. And I got to see Dallas coming in there in first place. And that was like really exciting. I was like, that son of a bitch is about to pull this thing off, isn't he? And, uh, and then but like, you can't, you gotta love every, I don't know if I just feel like you gotta love Dallas, man. He was, we can talk about more about the race and stuff maybe next time, but I just wasn't a bone.
Masterclass.
There wasn't a bone in my
Masterclass.
body that was like, ah, bummer. Dallas won again. I was like, hell yeah, dude, the guy deserves it. And
Dude, yeah.
um and yeah, so Shaq Tulik was pretty special, and I spent a lot of time hanging out with Jason Mackey, and he was a nice, super nice guy, and talked to Paige, and she was talking about her being a little tired out there on the trail, and was life is hard 700 miles into the Iditarod, so it was just fun to see those guys in the front of the pack.
Nice.
And I'd try to, yeah, I'd just, it'd be nice to have a quick conversation with someone that knew, but I didn't want to be too much of a bother kind of thing. And so that was cool. That was Jack Tulik.
Nice. And then you went to your last checkpoint for at least like having to worry about the cameras. And you made best of friends with the homie Quinn in White Mountain, huh?
Yeah, yep. I spent some time with this kid that was there. He was there to like help with like rides to the airstrip, but we landed on the river. We had skis, but some of the airplanes didn't have skis, so they'd land up on the airstrip, which is a little bit of a hike. So he'd go and be shuttling up and down, and he's 11. And he's like pretty fit kid and like pretty hardy dude, and he was in hindsight when we were hanging out, I think he had like coffee or something. He was like super talkative, and everybody there was like, you know, we were like, take it easy, let us get a word in here, Quinn. But he was super excited to see everybody, and it's like he just teeming with positivity and good vibes, and and he was excited to talk on the live feed, and I got him in there a little bit, and then yeah, he we hung out for like hours, and hours that first day, and then he must have gotten a little tired of me because I only saw him a couple times after that. But he was awesome. He bought us like apple cider, like that fancy apple cider in like glass bottles, like from like the local store. It's like probably like $15 a bottle or something. He brought like two of them. He's like, "I got you guys." I was like, "Did you just buy me champagne, dude?" Because they kind of look like champagne bottles. So we had some of this. He was super welcoming and happy to see people, and it was refreshing because it was just uninhibited excitement that we were there and that the race was happening. And sometimes people might be a little shy or whatever, and he was just like, "Nah, like I'm stoked,
Dude,
and I'm not scared to tell you about how stoked I am," and it was great.
dude, it was for me. So I get a text. I think I had maybe just wrapped up doing one of our lives or whatever. I get a text. It's like, dude, are you checking into your brother at the checkpoint right now? Like, he's talking to some like local kid right now, and it is the most ridiculous conversation. And so like I go over, and I guess at that point you guys had gone down the rabbit hole about root beer, right? So like I'm like reading the chat in there, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, the root beer." And then I felt like at some point, I forget who was coming in, but you were like, you had it like perfect. Like someone was coming in at the checkpoint, you had it all zoomed in, and you're just trying to give the viewers like a nice, like, here we've got, we'll just, here we've got Mila Porcild coming in. Our team's looking great. And like, as any time you like take not even a breath, just like a half breath, he was there like ready to just like interrupt, and like I'm dying, dude. I am laughing so hard because I'm like, Sean, you like started to talk to where you never were taking a breath. So I was like, Sean's
Yeah.
like, Sean's like, all right, I'm trying to do this, but he doesn't want to be mean, but he's trying to like. I was just dying,
No, we had,
man.
we had a nice Gwen and I had a nice talk. I was like, "Hey man, just like people are paying to hear this stuff. You know, we gotta kind of be careful. I'm not saying don't talk, but you gotta pick and choose your moments, kind of thing." And he was like, like immediately was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, no problem," and like was not an issue after
And
that.
then you
So I
never
was like,
saw him again. You scared him off. That's all it
"No, he
took.
came back. No, he came back, but I only saw him a couple times. I think he had some friends show up and they went out and ice fishing or something. I don't know."
um,
But yeah, White Mountain was there for quite a while, and it was cool. I saw the first musher come in, the last musher, you know, all the way to the last musher, and got to witness some pretty cool moments there at the end. It was great. Everybody that made it to White Mountain made it to Nome, is my understanding, and so that was kind of cool. No, and yeah, it was cool. You get to talk with almost every musher, and that's kind of my favorite thing, is just get to have these little moments, even if it's nothing like there's no crazy story, but did hear some crazy stories. um and yeah, it was just to get these moments with the mushers and see them at that state. And you know not many people get to see these mushers all along the trail, see the dogs all along the trail. And some, like, I mean, and I got to say, yeah, a lot of really, really good looking dog teams there at that last checkpoint. And it was good vibes, good volunteers were awesome. I made some friends there, and yeah, it was, we can discuss it more about this because this really is only the tip of the iceberg, but
Yep.
it was a really fun series of checkpoints to go to, and I really hope I get to do it again next year, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I think that we should just leave it here. All right. And I think we're gonna at least run it back one or two more times, honestly. But I'm glad to get this one out there. And I should have said something at the beginning, but part of why it has taken us this long is I actually last Tuesday, oh, literally a week ago, we were scheduled to do this, and I had to have emergency surgery to have my appendix out. No big deal. I'm not looking for any sympathy, but um, the recovery has been real, and today's like the best day I've had yet, and not having to take any medicine or anything like that. So apologies for like I was so consistent every day during the Iditarod, and then like bam, there was like a 2 week break again. So we will be back, and thank you for those who joined last minute live. Your questions are appreciated. What was one thing I wanted to follow up with on that? Oh, just Sean Finley said that she is very sorry that she was watching live when it happened and felt for everyone involved. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Her heart goes out to Hunter, Isaac, and Calvin. Very heartbreaking. Also was wondering if we're going to be covering the Kobuck. And yes, we won't be at the Kobuck, but, we'll probably cover it in an intro to one of our upcoming episodes. Sean and I have talked about how a lot of people after that Iditarod kind of like trickle off, but the Kobuck is a hell of an event, and we will certainly be following it. So we'll be sure to keep you guys in the loop on that. And outside of that, thank you guys for joining, and until next time, y'all take care.